Greetings from Fernbrook Family Center. We're a mental health agency serving children, families, and adults in southern Minnesota through a variety of mental health programs, including in-home services, school-based services, and traditional outpatient services. My name is Haley Girardi, and I'm the Family Engagement Specialist here at Fernbrook. And I am here talking to you today about parenting during the pandemic. And this is the fourth of a 5-part series of community education topics focused on mental health that's sponsored by the City of Kasson's Mental Health Initiative. So let's dive right in. So I'm hoping that these headlines strike a chord with you in a way that lets you know that you are not alone if you are struggling as a parent during the pandemic. It is tough. I think that we could talk for hours and commiserate about all the ways that this has been so challenging and brought about so many different stressors that we frankly were not quite prepared to handle. This is the first time we've been faced with something like this. So if these headlines describe you, know that you are definitely not alone, which I'm sure you already knew. This comic really captures it nicely for me, I think, going into 2021. And I feel like I can't handle one more thing. What is going to happen next? How do we deal with this? It's just really difficult. But I want to focus not on the problems that we're having right now, but really on solutions. And the solutions that I want to cover today are, kind of not reinventing the wheel. These are pretty simple, everyday sorts of practices that we're probably already doing. And I wanted to do that on purpose to make sure that these are solutions that could work for everybody. At least one solution in here I'm hoping you'll find would be helpful for the problems that you're dealing with and the issues that you're dealing with at home. I wanted to focus more on what parents can do rather than on thinking about child behavior at this time. That'll be our final top is thinking more broadly about what are some positive parenting practices that we can use to support our children's social and emotional development, but there will be a little bit of overlap. And the solutions that I'm going to talk about today, they can be used to solve or improve a variety of different problems at different ages and developmental levels. And they're really, like I said, since they're so simple and just kind of everyday practices that likely we're already doing, these strategies are kind of like bang, giving you good bang for your buck. A little bit about where I'm drawing these strategies from. Why did I choose these strategies in particular? These strategies are coming from a variety of foundations in science and child development and parenting science. That's the area in which I was trained, as well as our understanding of interpersonal neurobiology, which is a field that really focuses on what's happening in our brains and when we are engaged with our children and our children are engaged with us. Just generally, we're socializing with other people. What's happening in our brains during that time? How can we use what we know about brain functioning and structure to understand our relationships, and especially to understand our emotions and our behaviors? And of course, we're coming from a mental health agency. This is also, I'm looking through a lens of clinical psychology or mental health, counseling, that sort of thing, but also just real life and things that I've found to work for me as well, and things that I have suggested for the families that I work with. All right, so the first strategy that I want to mention is just talking. Sounds very simple, right? And we do a lot of talking with our children. Usually it's nagging or lecturing. Hopefully there's more than that too, but I think a lot of time we might find ourselves doing more talking than we need to, or doing talking that's not very effective when we can think about this maybe in a different way. So why am I suggesting talking? Well, the first part of talking that I want to mention today is emotion coaching. So we need to talk with our children about their feelings, about their internal experiences. Right now is so difficult for children. It's difficult for us, of course, too, but children, as they are understanding themselves in the world, they're learning to organize their own emotions, and there's just so much going on. They have so many feelings right now. Their world has been turned upside down. They can't see their friends. They're learning from home. All these things just brings about so many emotions. And maybe you have a child who expresses those emotions very freely, through crying or yelling or through their words. Or maybe you have a child who is more an internalizer, or kind of shuts down or just keeps to themselves. Either way, emotion coaching, which is a practice that comes from the Gottman Institute, John Gottman and colleagues. And it's also something that is similarly found in the parenting science literature to be a really effective parenting strategy that is a healthy parenting strategy that relates to positive social and emotional development of children. So parents who more frequently engage in emotion coaching tend to have children who get along better with other people, regulate or control their emotions more easily, and these sorts of things. And really, there are just 5 steps to emotion coaching based from the Gottman Institute. And the first thing is to listen. Now, of course, we probably listen to our kids all the time. My kid doesn't stop talking, right? But I mean, really listen. I mean, especially when you are in a situation with your child where maybe your child is having a behavior or a big feeling, or you're just talking about something that's bothering them, or maybe you've started the talk and you're wanting to correct their behavior or something like that. It's important to set aside your agenda for that moment if they are having a big feeling, and just let them express it. And this can be really hard. So emotion coaching might take a lot of practice. It certainly represents a mindset shift for a lot of parents. A lot of us did not grow up with our parents coaching us through our emotions. Many times we were shamed for our emotions and told that we shouldn't be crying, or they want to change our emotions right away. And usually this is because when we see our kids having big feelings, it triggers a lot of stuff in us. It brings up a lot of feelings in ourselves, and we tell ourselves different stories about what we might be doing wrong, or what might happen if they continue to act this way, all these sorts of things, right? Put all that aside. When your kid's having a big emotion, take just a minute and let them express it. Let them ride the wave. Our emotions really, they ebb and they flow. And when we're having a stress response, it peaks and it's going to reside. Okay, so just listen. Give them your undivided attention for that moment. This doesn't have to take a lot of time. Really make eye contact with them. And just nod. Try to relax your face so that you're not scowling at them. You might have come into the interaction with a scowl, but try to be mindful of that. Then the next thing that you do is, in your words, you're going to show empathy for what they're feeling and validate their feeling. Like, that sounds really hard. I can see that's hard for you. Yeah, that makes sense. I can see where you're feeling that way. And then help them label their emotion. This is a key piece to this. When we label emotions, we're actually engaging the prefrontal cortex of our brain, the much newer part of our brain. It resides kind of behind our forehead. And this part of our brain is involved in planning and decision making and thinking about the future, all these sorts of things that are really unique to humans. And when we engage in labeling our emotions, we're using that prefrontal cortex, and we're helping to make connections between the prefrontal cortex and the other areas of our brain, the limbic system, and other places that are deeper inside of our brain and older in evolution that are really active when we're feeling big emotions. So it's important that we do this often. The more that we do it, the easier it will be. And when we label those emotions, we move from just a purely being overwhelmed by the feeling to actually thinking about thinking, or metacognition, thinking about our feeling, meta emotion. So we can say something like, it sounds like you're feeling sad. Is that right? We can make a guess based on their body language. Or that's a really big feeling. Do you think it's more anger or sadness? Maybe they've already told us very clearly how they're feeling, and we can just validate that. That makes sense that you're feeling so mad. Okay, so those steps could go together. We also can set limits during this time. So I'm not suggesting that we should let kids get away with whatever they want to do, act however they want to act, because we are just stepping back and letting them do it and supporting their emotions. We still can set limits. So we can still tell them, I see and hear your feeling, and I'm helping you to see and hear that you're having a feeling, not just a bodily experience or sensation. But I'm also making sure that you're going to behave within these limits. So we can say something like, it's okay to be angry, but you can't throw things, if that's what the child was doing. Or you can be mad, but you need to go to your room if you're going to yell. Or you can yell on this pillow if you need to yell. Or I know that you're disappointed, but you can't talk to me like that. We don't talk to each other like that in this house. And especially if everybody's calm, then there might be more talk about limits. If there needs to be a consequence because of choices and behaviors that were made during, say, a tantrum and these sorts of things, just wait until you move through this process. As I mentioned, this really requires a mindset shift. This is, maybe there's parts of this that you're already doing and they're so fantastic. I encourage you to keep doing that. But for many of us, this seems kind of foreign. We weren't taught to do this. We weren't we weren't going through this in our own homes when we were growing up. So you might need to reframe your relationship with what it means when your kid has big feelings. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. Doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. And certainly doesn't mean that kids shouldn't have big feelings. They're going to have big feelings. That's what it means to be a kid. And especially right now, we're all having big feelings. So when a child is having a meltdown, or your teenager is, storming in the door, we can reframe what this is all going to look like by seeing it as not, oh, here we go again, or how can I ignore this until it goes away, or how can I cheer them up right away because I don't want to deal with this. Instead, we can see this as a really important opportunity to support with our kids and connect with them and to teach them. When we do that, we're improving our relationship with them. We're showing them that we care, that they can come to us, and that we can help them. It can encourage more open communication. This, of course, will be so important as they move through adolescence, so that we can keep open communication and know what they're doing and guide them through big decisions that have to do with risky behavior and that sort of thing. And also addressing these feelings in the moment. This is the long game we're looking at. It's going to improve behavior over the long term, but also right in the moment. When they're seen and heard and they can just ride out that wave of emotion, it can improve their behavior in the immediate time. So here's an example of this that happened just the other day in my home. So I work remotely from home, as I'm sure lots of you do. And I'm fortunate enough to have my sister as our nanny, and they're taking a break from kindergarten and they're getting ready to go sledding, and I can kind of hear this in the background, and I'm not paying too much attention. I'm doing my work, and my kiddo comes in my office and says, Mom, where are the sleds? We can go sledding right now. And he's so excited. He's beaming. He's pretty much yelling because he's so excited about it. And I realized we don't have the sleds. And I said, uh-oh, they're still in Dad's trunk. Immediately meltdown. He was having a hard day. Kindergarten at home for him is really, really hard as it is. Instantly crying. He says, I want to go sledding. Now I can never go sledding today. And he slumps down. Of course, this isn't ideal. I could say, quit crying. You can go sledding when Dad gets home. Now get out of my office, right? Or I could say, I know. Here, let's get you. Why don't you have some ice cream right now and just try to cheer him up, right? Instead, I stopped my work. I had the luxury of being able to do that as well. I wasn't in the middle of a meeting or anything like that, but I also would argue that I hope that an employer would have grace during a time like this if you needed to leave a meeting. But I stopped my work and I turned toward him and I engaged in that listening. I looked at him and I listened as he cried. And then I engaged in validating and labeling his emotions. I said, that's really disappointed. I'm so sorry that didn't work out. I could see how excited you were to go sledding. You really wanted to go right now. And that simple act of really just joining with him and showing empathy in that moment, it helped to bring down his emotion a little bit. He was still sniffling, but he wasn't yelling or outwardly crying anymore or sobbing. And he was able to engage that prefrontal cortex and the planning part of his brain, and he came up with a way to solve the problem. He said, can I call Dad to have him bring them home? I want to tell him to bring them home. And next, I need to set a limit. I praise him for his problem solving. Luckily, Dad is near enough that he could bring them home, and that worked in his schedule. But it could have been the case right there that I had to set the limit. That I love that idea. Unfortunately, Dad's having a really busy day, or his office is too far from home. He can't bring them home. You're going to have to wait. But I know that you can figure something else out, and I know that's disappointing. And I'm here to help if you want, right? So it could be that there needed to be additional limits, but as it happened, it worked out and he could bring home the sleds and it worked. But that's what that looks like. Here's another example of emotion coaching from the movie Inside Out. Okay, so you can see the joy the yellow character does. What a lot of us do as parents is just, I don't want to see the sadness, I want to cheer them up. But instead, what he really needed was just a moment to be in it and to have somebody with him during that moment. So this emotion coaching takes some practice, but I encourage you to give it a try. Ultimately, though, we're not going to get it right all the time. And most of the time, we're probably not going to get it right. Maybe we can get it right half of the time. Really, if we can get it right 30% of the time, approximately, research suggests we're doing okay. Our kids are going to be just fine. But one really important thing that we can do when we don't get it right is to repair. So sometimes we're going to yell at our kids, right? We're probably all doing a lot of yelling right now. And when we lose our cool, it's a good opportunity again to think about it in a little bit of a different way and shift our mindset and take it as an opportunity to teach them skills that we want them to learn. So if we lose our cool on our kids and we yell or raise our voice or say something that we wish that we shouldn't have said, wait until everybody's calmed down, especially yourself, so that you can really be with them in that moment. and apologize and say something like, I lost my cool and I shouldn't have raised my voice. You didn't deserve for me to react like that. I'm really sorry. We can also involve them in the problem solving, like, you know what? I realize that I think that happened because I'm really cranky and hungry. I haven't eaten yet today. I'm gonna have lunch. What would you like to have? Or next time I should take a deep breath before talking. Do you have any suggestions for what you do, to stop yourself from yelling? What do you think I could do differently next time? Or what do you need from me? And really, there's a lot of times that we feel that we had good reason for yelling at our kids because they weren't listening, they were being very defiant or disrespectful. And that might be true, but again, for that minute, we need to set that aside. And it's because we want to teach them a different message, right? So even though we know we had good reason for yelling, it's important to remember that we're going to teach them. One, we're modeling this skill for them. We're teaching them how to handle conflict, how to apologize to somebody when you've made a mistake. That's an important skill to learn that we want our kids to learn, right? Number two, it sends the message to them that they are valued. We value them, we care about them, they matter. They matter enough to hear an apology, right? That's important for them to know. It also teaches them that yelling isn't okay. If you don't want your kids to yell, don't yell at your kids, right? But obviously we're all human, so it's going to happen. But we can reinforce the message that hey, that's not a value in our family. We shouldn't be yelling at each other. Mistakes happen, but let's remember that that's not something that we want to be doing. 4, we're teaching them that they deserve respect, that they deserve to be treated with respect by other people. If we don't want our kids to grow up and think it's okay to be yelled at by everybody, then this is really important, right? We don't want them to be in friendships, romantic relationships, partnerships where they're being yelled at really often, right? And so a good way to make sure that that doesn't happen is to not yell at them. And when we accidentally do, to repair it, right? That teaches them that they deserve respect. And it also just works to disarm the situation, right? The same way that the emotion coaching can help to bring the feelings back down, this can do the same thing. So if you've not apologized to your kids before after losing your cool, I encourage you to give it a try sometime, and the results really might surprise you. So here's an example again of this. This happened just last night. I wanted to throw this in here because I thought it was a good example of how this works. So short story, last night I was making a supper. I was finishing up a supper that I started in the crock pot earlier in the day, right? And it was a new recipe and there were many steps to it. I put a lot of time in it, right? But as I was making it, I realized that I had forgotten a couple of ingredients from the store. No big deal. I was going to make it anyway. Well, when dinner time came, I tried it. It was not any good, and I didn't want to eat it. And I could have just served it, yes, but I had the luxury that we already had other ingredients in the fridge for another meal that used chicken. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to use this chicken in that meal. I'm going to make another meal. I had a long day. I want a good meal. So I got to work at dinner time on another meal. And I was starving, right? Kiddo was hungry. He had a snack, but didn't want it. We all want supper. Anyway, so I'm scrambling in the kitchen. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I'm really hungry. Kid comes in and starts talking a mile a minute and just very loud. And my husband's already in the kitchen doing some construction work. And it's just, it's too much. And I shh. And it's so rude to shush people, right? But that's what I did. And my kid was devastated and he left the room and I could hear him crying. I took a deep breath. I took a minute. I thought, why did I do that? But I walked in and right away he said, Mom, you shushed me. It scared me and that was so mean. I can't believe you did that. And I said, you're right. I did shush you really loud and angrily. I could have said, well, I shushed you because you were being too loud and you know that I'm trying to hurry up with supper. That wasn't going to help anything, right? And then I stopped, I listened, I let him tell me how that felt. I got down at his level and I said, I can see that that really hurt your feelings. I reflected back what he told me. I said, I'm sorry. And he said, it's okay, Mommy. And he gave me a hug. And I said, it wasn't okay for me to react that way when I was overwhelmed. Can I tell you what was going on for me? And he said, okay. So I kind of told him what had happened earlier and why I was so stressed. And I said, even though I felt that way, I should have taken a deep breath first and then just asked for some space and quiet. Next time I'm going to work hard to do that. And then we were done. Doesn't always work out that nicely, but that's my story. Okay. So another kind of strategy that we can use to have quality talks with our kids, not just lecturing and nagging, but really talking about the stuff that matters and making sure that they feel seen and heard. And we're here to help them work through those big feelings and problems that they're having right now, is to make it part of your routine. So a good time for this is dinner time. If there's another time that your family is gathered together, such as snack or like in the car on the way to something, whatever makes sense. You only need a couple of minutes. But it's important to do this kind of at the same time or during that same tradition or part of your schedule or routine. So one thing that you could do as a family is talk about your highs and lows, your peaks and your valleys. And so this is one that we do often at home. And we each take turns. So the adults do it too, so you can model, talking about your feelings, especially if something stressful happened. You can talk about the negative feelings that you had during it, maybe how you coped with it, right? But we talk about the high of our day, what was the best part of your day and what was the worst part of your day, and just take turns. Make sure that you're, actively listening as everybody's talking. Another thing, especially right now, that's so important is to think about what are we grateful for. Each day everybody could go around the table or wherever you are and say the thing that you're grateful for that day. Another game that's a little more engaging and just kind of fun, it could be about a serious topic. This also can be a way that kind of disarms people, makes it feel a little safer to bring up topics that maybe feel a little more stressful to bring up, is by playing a game called Questions Only, where everything that you say has to be in the form of a question. And another way to check in about, what happened today is to do an ABC Our Day game, where you take turns, you talk about your day, you see if you can get all the way through the alphabet between the family, A through Z in order, mentioning one thing that happened that day or a word as part of a phrase or sentence from that next letter that happened in the day. So these can be some kind of fun and engaging ways to get used to talking together as a family. There are also great products out there that I found, for example, on Amazon. They're in other stores as well. And I have some examples here: Table Topics, Family Talk, etc. And when we start this, might need, a little bit of introducing. We might need to kind of pitch it to our kids a little bit. Like, today we're going to try something new at dinner. I'd like to see us do this every day. We're going to talk about our day. We're going to share our highs, or the best part of our day, and our lows, or the worst or most difficult parts of our day. What do you think about this? It's always important to involve our kids in decision making, share power with them, helps them to feel in control, helps them to feel valued. I know this seems weird, but we're all going through a lot right now, and it's really important for us to be able to get comfortable sharing our feelings with each other. And you know what? If we hate it after 3 weeks, we can talk about it some other way. Find another way to talk about the hard stuff on a regular basis. Deal? Can we give this a try tonight? Something like that. If you are interested in how to talk to your kids, improving the way you talk to your kids, getting your kids to listen more, supporting their feelings, help to tame their big feelings, these are 3 books that I recommend. No Drama Discipline by Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, and Listen So Kids Will Talk. There's also a version of this for younger kiddos. And Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child by John Gottman. And there's also a video series if you're wanting to learn that way instead. Okay. There's also going to be a lot of tough talks right now. one of those can just be making decisions about social distancing and these sorts of things related to COVID-19. And so I really like Emily Oster's 5 steps. Emily Oster is a economic, I'm blanking, but she's been in a lot of interviews and on the news and stuff, sharing kind of these 5 steps to making decisions about COVID-19 as a family. And I think this is helpful. I personally have noticed that just like a lot of decision fatigue, like I can't think about this. I can't turn it around in my head any other way. I don't know how to make a decision. I'm spent, right? It can be difficult. And it's kind of nice to just have a framework to come back to, like writing this down, putting it in a notebook, posting it next to your calendar, whatever, to help you go through them. And I encourage you to involve your family in this. So what you do is the first step is you frame the question. So if there's something that you're wondering if it's okay that you want to do as a family, like going back to school, frame the question really specifically. So like, what are the actual options that you're talking about? Like A versus B, we're going to go back to school, or we're going to do the distance learning, or A, B, or C. We're going to go back to school, or we're going to do the distance learning, or I don't know what C would be in this example. And then number 2 would be to mitigate the risk, or in other words, how can these choices that you are deciding between, how can they be as low risk as possible? So making sure that the ones that you're including are the most low risk as possible. And then you'll evaluate the risk, or really think about, now that we know the safest way to do A, B, and C, or we're choosing the most low risk things of all the available options, what's the chance that something will happen? Like, what's the worst case scenario to us? What's the chance that somebody has COVID if you, are gathering with family members, you're deciding to go visit for the weekend or something? What's the chance that you'll have it and spread it? Where has everybody been? Can we get tested first? Think about what makes sense. What's the chance that if somebody does get it, they get really, really sick, right? And then evaluate the benefits. What is it that we are hoping to get out of this, and how important is that to us? How much do we need it? And then make your decision. Okay. So I have links here. She's featured in Slate.com and NPR. There are also videos of her. There's just a YouTube video where she talks through this with examples, and I know she's had news interviews and things like that too. So if you want some more concrete examples, then feel free to search those out. Something else that happens is needing to set boundaries. And if you're somebody who has a hard time with setting boundaries with family members or friends, it might be helpful to kind of think about the line that you want to use, write it down or rehearse it, maybe run it by another trusted adult and say, like, does this sound respectful? Do I sound like I'm clear? Do I sound confident? Whatever the issues that you personally have with setting boundaries, that might be helpful. So it might sound like, we decided to not have a birthday party this year. I know it's so disappointing. It's sad. Instead, Grayson would really love to receive homemade cards and video messages. And, and then stay firm with what your decision is. Say, if somebody pushes back, thank you for sharing. I know it's hard. I have to stand by my decision. Okay, other tough talks that need to be had right now are about continued police violence, current rioting, and the Capitol riots, injustice, these sorts of things. And so in preparing for these tough talks, I've been looking at professional resources from the Child Mind Institute, the National Education Association, National Association for School Psychologists, and the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, among others. For younger children, we do want to make sure to talk about this stuff. Make it as age appropriate as possible. Don't include too much information. You want just enough information. But even with their younger children, if we haven't shown them the news, if they have no idea what's going on, they still might feel changes in us. We might be more tense. They might have overheard a snippet of something that the adults in the home were talking about. And if we just leave them to figure it out, that might feel very scary for them. They might fill in the gaps of what they don't know. with things they do know from movies and whatever, and the story that they come up with might even be more scary. And so it's important we just bring it up, right? Ask questions. We can lead with a question like, hey, have you noticed anything different about mom and dad lately? We can assure them that they are safe. Make sure to stay calm when you're talking about it. Think through what you're going to say beforehand, and make sure to validate their feelings. Don't assume that they don't know anything that's going on. They might not, but like I said, they're going to pick up on the tension or anxiety, the worry, these sorts of things. Don't over-explain. Try not to put people into boxes and talk about bad and good. Kids are already doing that at this age. But we want to avoid making broad generalizations. Just stick to facts and be honest. It's okay if you don't know the answer to one of their questions. I would show them the news for young children at this time. That can just be more scary for them. And try not to vent in front of them. It's okay if when you're talking about any of this, you are emotional. You're just showing them human emotion and modeling, working through it. But avoid just ranting and raving in front of them, because that can feel scary and confusing. For older children, again, talk about it, welcome their questions, focus on the positive too, if there are positives, like, after the Capitol riots, the outcome was that everybody came back together and made decisions. Again, just be honest with them. Encourage them, to share their opinions, and try not to shame them for their opinions. You can provide more information and keep talking about it. So don't just talk about it one time and be done. This can be a continued conversation. And for teens especially, we can really use this as a way to ask what they know, ask where they're getting their information from, really help them distinguish between facts and opinions. Talk about leadership. What can they do to fight for the things that they believe in, right? And really to support them in those feelings. Another framework that I like from Evolved Teacher, I handle on Instagram, is the CARE model. So C would be consider their point of view. So ask before giving any opinions, ask what they've noticed, ask what they think is happening or why. And if they're not quite sure, sitting down to draw with them or journal. Sometimes you need some time to express thoughts and feelings in another way, especially children might do better with writing or drawing than they will with expressing verbally. Acknowledge their feelings without any judgment, what we've already talked about. Reminding them about family values, about community, how we treat everybody fairly and with respect. Thinking about what's acceptable behavior at home and in school and your community. How can you support each other? How can you support your community? And talking about safety and how that's a value as well. And then empower them. Tell them that their voice matters and help them find something they can do to help. I like this infographic as well from Teen Health Doc, another Instagram page. There's a lot of trash on social media, right? But there's actually a lot of really good stuff too if you search out professionals who are sharing their information widely. So I like this one too. Same sort of idea, but a nice just little infographic to come back to. And here's a script from Dr. Becky. Dr. Becky at home. She has a website and she's a child psychologist. But this is a script that she used. So something like, I want to talk about something serious that we're all going to have big feelings about. And share about it. Be truthful, use real words, be plain, right? And then make sure to pause and ask how they're doing about it. What's this like to talk about? It's okay to respond to their questions with not having an answer, these sorts of things. But I would encourage you, if you haven't had a talk with your children about this yet, to kind of rehearse and prepare, work with your co-parent or partner if you have one, and think about setting aside a time to start these talks. Another great thing that we can do, a great way to just open up these talks also, is to use picture books, especially for younger children. Using picture books, children anywhere through elementary age especially, can be such a wonderful way to get ideas across. to teach different messages and to start the conversation. I encourage you to go to embracerace.org. They have so many fantastic resources for how to talk about race in children's books, how to talk about other differences in children's books, how to choose books that are written by authors who are speaking from that voice, these sorts of things. Here are some that I like for younger children. And some for young, well, a little later elementary age that really deal more with racial injustice. And some books for 6th through 12th graders as well. The point being, there is a lot out there. And if you're not exactly sure what to say, read together and then just talk about it. Okay, so the next strategy is just to play. The next just simple everyday strategy is to play more. So we want to aim for quality over quantity. If you're like me and you have a young child and you hate to pretend play, know that you're not alone. And it really just takes 10 minutes of an interrupted time. Same thing goes if you're talking about joining your kid in a video game or shooting hoops, I guess when the weather is nicer. Whatever it is that they love to do, try to join them in something that they love to do for just 10 minutes a day, most days or a few days of the week. And during that time, put your phone away, give them your full attention, really comment on their play and praise them. Let them lead the play, especially with pretend play. Even if we're not loving what they're doing, like let's say their play is looking kind of violent or aggressive, like now's not the time to try to change behavior, question about why they're doing certain things. This is our time to join them and show them that we care what they're doing, and this is just special time together. My kid, for instance, loves to play a lot of dinosaurs, and since coronavirus has started, his play often involves themes of danger and being trapped, like not being able to escape the scary dinosaurs, no matter how many different ways I try to come up with to, get around the dinosaurs. There's another bigger dinosaur. Nope, that doesn't work. And that's him working through the feeling of being restricted and trapped. And you can't do the things that you want to do, and that feels hard, right? So, your kids can tell you a lot through their play. Another thing that, you could do is really just put it in your schedule and do like a once a week, one night a week family game night, board games, video games, movie night where you each choose a fun snack, whatever. Another thing would just to be spontaneous, just like on a whim. So like one night we're just going to reverse the rule. You can jump on the couches and it's just for tonight. Or just do something silly like throw a marshmallow in the microwave and everybody watch it get really big. My husband brought home some different root beers the other night, and we did a root beer tasting flight. You could do that with hot chocolate or whatever. Throw snowballs, have target practice, or throw them at each other, whatever. Dancing feels so good. It's rhythmic, it's soothing in our bodies. Do more dancing. Try playful types of discipline. This also can work because it'll help kids to listen more and be more compliant quicker. I give it a try, you'll be surprised. Usually this is not what we're wanting to do when a kid isn't listening, but sometimes you just gotta flip a switch and try something else and it might work. Like race them to pick up their toys, race against the clock. If the kid's not wanting to come sit down for dinner, well, you better not. Because now my imaginary friend Billy's in your spot. Billy's gonna eat all your food. Or even for older kids, like I'll bet you $5 that I can clean the kitchen before you clean your room. This isn't going to work all the time, but when it does work, it just feels better for everybody. So give it a try. Otherwise, just, think of other silly ideas. Actually go sledding with your kids. If they're going sledding, join them sometime. Don't hurt your back. I can only go a couple times down the hill and I'm getting a headache and a backache, but, within reason, right? Or turn off all the lights and have a softball battle, or a Nerf battle or something. Rough house. I can't stand a rough house. It's too rough for me. Luckily, my husband likes to do it, but rough housing is so good for kids. It teaches them boundaries. It teaches them consent. They help get out their energy. They're learning limits. It's great. So whatever you can do that you enjoy doing, that works for you, that your kids enjoy doing, maybe it's just like joining your teenager and he teaches you how to play that video game, even if it's violent and you don't approve of it, for those 10 minutes, just do it and enjoy it with them, okay? So we've been talking about different ways to prioritize mental health, but I want to talk a little bit more about what it means to make mental health a priority. So make sure that you are finding time to regularly talk about your challenges with somebody. Find somebody in your social support network that you can talk to about this. Really think about, what are your feelings about these problems? What are your stressors? What do you need? And when you are doing this with other parents, especially, let them talk to and just listen to each other without, trying to one-up each other, and be empathetic and validating. But it's so important. We're all going through a hard time right now. It's so important we talk about it. One way to identify your feelings, which might be hard for us. A lot of times we're like, I'm upset. And upset could mean so many different things. Upset could mean mad, or could mean sad. And we have different needs when we're mad and we're sad. It's important for us to know what the feeling is so we know what we need, right? And so one way to do this would be an app on your phone. So Mood Meter is a really great one. It's 99 cents. You do have to buy it, but then it's done. And it has these different quadrants that you choose your feeling based on how pleasant it is and how much energy you have behind that feeling or in your body. And then it asks you, well, do you want to change that feeling or not? And if you do, it'll have some suggestions for you, like proven suggestions to help with those feelings. And then it'll also track this over time for you. So that might be a helpful tool. We also want to help our kids identify their feelings. This, of course, is part of talking, but we can kind of go a step further and use visuals, especially for younger kids. Sesame Street has this great one. There are so many out there if you just Google feelings faces or feelings chart. And this can help them to match their face with the feeling, because they might not have the language for it. Feelings thermometers are also really great. So in this one, for example, you could have this and like laminate it or put like duct tape over it so that they could color with a marker each time and you wash it off. Or you could print out a bunch of these or just reference it. But this could be, the feeling thermometer that they come back to every time they feel a big feeling, or maybe they just have an anger thermometer, say, if anger is their biggest feeling or the one that you're struggling with. And they could draw their face. You could have a picture of them. What does their small anger look like? What does their face and body look like when they're medium and big anger? And then help them to come up with some things that they can do. Stomping feet, punching a pillow, exercising, pushing a wall, deep breathing, getting a hug, whatever, at each of these times. Again, picture books are fantastic. Some that I recommend are right here: Visiting Feelings, The Color Monster, Grumpy Monkey, My Body Sends a Signal. These are great books for helping kids to understand feelings, that they come and go, and sometimes they just are as they are. Sometimes we need to work through them and organize them, these sorts of things. Especially for much younger kiddos who don't yet have the capability to have an internal speech or an internal monologue, and they're still developing that sense of self. They might need some external tools to help them recognize the feeling in them and then kind of work through that thing. So these are some just like wooden pegs I found on Amazon. If you just type in like feelings dolls. And they could choose the one that they feel and they could talk to that. Okay, grab angry, grab your green guy. Okay, now let's tell your green guy to breathe. And then their child's not so much focused on themselves, they're focused on this thing, but they're doing it too. Or just making out of cardboard and some paper plates, different feelings faces, and those could be your feelings buddies. And you use them together, and you use that as a tool to help the kid talk to that feeling buddy to calm down. As part of talking with them, we also can use the name entertainment. I've already talked about labeling emotions, but this is going to help them to bring their feeling down, to engage the prefrontal cortex of their brain, and to connect that with the more emotion centers of their brain. Different ways we can do that. Do you need a hug? Now tell me what you're feeling. Here, is your feeling more blue or yellow? Here's your chart. Point to what you're feeling. Point to the feeling that you're feeling. But let's sit together in the comfy chair. Here, which feeling buddy do you want to talk to? That's how it can sound for littles. We can do these same sorts of things for big kids. So feelings charts, if you go to Therapist Aid and you look through their resources, these are free. You can download them. They could have a folder. They could have these in their room, whatever. And this can help them recognize their feelings as well. Lists of emotions, the greater our emotion vocabulary, the more we're going to understand our feelings and be able to express them, which helps to tame them. For teenagers especially, having a weekly mood chart might be helpful in making sense of their mood, how that's tied to what they're doing day to day, these sorts of things. Another example of a feelings thermometer. And then, of course, we want to help them choose a strategy, right? So like I mentioned about setting limits, especially the kids being aggressive, it's important that when we're helping them recognize that feeling, we're still setting limits. I'm going to bring you to your spot so that you can stay safe. Your body's not safe right now, or being angry makes sense. You can yell into your pillow, give them limited choices or choose for them if you need to, and make sure that you're practicing using strategies just as part of routine, or at times that your kiddo is calm or regulated so that they can be more comfortable doing it. And using visuals is great. So you could just do like clip art and print them out, or you could draw them. You could use Post-it notes and draw on them, but each would be a different strategy. Like a hand, you would breathe. That would be that strategy. Getting a hug, music, talking about it, getting some water, doing jumping jacks, what have you. For older kiddos and teenagers, you can talk about what they're doing that's healthy and helpful, and what they're doing that's unhealthy or not helping them with their strategies. And this could be like a journal that they go to and have some quiet time, or they could work through it with you. And as far as books for feelings, Permission to Feel is a great one for you to understand feelings in your kids and yourselves. There are some journals for younger kids and older kids as well, to just have some quiet time to express feelings and journal them. Another thing that I want to mention in prioritizing mental health is, with school. If we're doing distance learning, I hope that you can give yourself permission to sometimes just skip the Zoom, or leave it early, or turn off the camera and email the teacher. I encourage you to stay in contact with your teacher and let them know how your kid is doing. That's something that I had to do recently. My kid got so upset one day, so mad and so anxious, so many different feelings that he was crying and threw up. And we left the Zoom and we sat on the bathroom floor in front of the heater, and we played together until he was calm enough and wanted to do his work, and we did it together, right? So make sure you're just staying in communication, no matter the age of your kiddos. Your teachers are going to understand. Teachers are great. They're doing the best that they can. Everybody is doing the best that they can right now. If you need more accommodations for your kiddo, if you need to take an absence to just have a family day, or a day to just watch TV all day, prioritize mental health. Talk about these thoughts and feelings, of course, and just remember, if you're feeling stressed about what your kid's not learning, or if they're falling behind, just remember that they can't learn anyway if they're not in a calm, safe space to learn. And so, even if the means to the end is to get them learning again, we need to prioritize the mental health and their emotional well-being to get to that space. Routine is another way to prioritize mental health. Routines feel safe. They help us to support our regulation so we can move easily and quickly through our stress response and come back to a state of regulation. We can include our kiddos in decisions about routine that helps them to have some control and power in their lives at a time that we're also powerless about things that are happening. We can also have a flexible routine and work in time for choice and these sorts of things. And I encourage you to utilize visuals too. This helps to reduce some of the cognitive load or just that all the mental energy that we're using to make decisions. If the decisions are right there in front of us and they're as a visual, then it makes it a lot easier for everybody. Some examples here, I have these two from consciousdiscipline.com. You can go to consciousdiscipline.com and make a free account and have access to a lot of wonderful resources, such as this example for what a morning learning routine would look like. This is my kiddos down here, if you could see. And I just did some clip art and put this in there, and this was in line with the kindergarten routine that was already in place. There are all sorts of icons for younger kiddos with, different visuals of daily routine steps. Clip art, of course, or just like Googling is a great place to do that. Or you can just draw things. So here was a previous one. We did a morning routine, just some Post-its, and I drew them so he knew, and he takes the Post-it, and when he's done with it, moves it to the other side. And then he can be more independent with this too, which is great. It gives you more time to do your work or whatever. But, if nothing else, I'm not asking that you totally reinvent the wheel with your routine. If nothing else, really prioritize your sleep and wake times, making those the same every day or very, very close. That's so important for the way that our body regulates, as well as meals, keeping our blood sugar regular, which affects our mood, and making sure that we know there's a boundary between when we're playing and when we're working. Because when we're all together all day, the quality of our interaction might not be very good. So make sure we're setting aside times that's like we're not on our phones, we're not on our computers, we're not working, we're just having family time right now. Okay, getting close to the end here, folks. I recognize this is a lot of content, but this is, this will be living on YouTube, so you can come back to it at any time. So cognitive shifts are something that I've kind of mentioned, these mindset shifts, mental shifts that we're going to need to have, right? Some of them are ones that are more likely to be helpful for our coping right now, in specific to COVID-19. So one cognitive shift is called radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is a practice that was developed by Marsha Linehan, and she developed a dialectical behavioral therapy. And I'm just going to go ahead and play this video for you first before I continue. right? So that is radical acceptance. Right now, that could sound like, and again, I love the practice, the simple practice of turning your hands up, making it a whole body experience. I don't know when we'll reach herd immunity for COVID-19. This feels hard, and I am not sure when things will get better. I recognize that. Or an everyday kind of experience that we might be having. I'm late signing into my meeting because my child needs help. I am feeling stressed, and that's expected. That makes sense. And it's not going to last forever. Or I'm worried that my baby will miss milestones right now because we don't have any social interaction. My baby can't play with babies. My baby's not seeing anybody but me. I'm doing the best that I can. Noticing moments of resistance to reality is key to this. So what does that feel like in your body? Notice when you're doing those shoulds. Try repeating, it is what it is. It is what it is. Or it's out of my hands. It's out of my hands. There are also guided meditations. You can just Google this. You can go on YouTube, etc. To sit in a comfortable position and hear somebody guide you through radical acceptance. And again, radical acceptance is not that you approve of what's going on or you agree with it or that you're giving up or that you're giving into what's happening. And this especially then is helpful for problems that are outside of our control. If there's something that's happening that we can control and make a change, then that's great. But if, like the state of the world, if there's these large things that we can't do anything about, that's when radical acceptance can be helpful. As the video mentioned, this takes a lot of practice, and it takes tuning into and hearing those clues, like if only XYZ, I wish I would have, I wish we could, why is this happening, I should, they should. These are clues that you're fighting against what's really happening, and take a moment and pause and see if you can change that. Okay, another cognitive shift that I would like to emphasize is the idea of just being a good enough parent right now, or caregiver. One thing that I forgot to mention is that in this talk, I'm talking about anybody who is raising a child, a grandparent, aunt or uncle, foster parent, family friend, whatever your role is. If you are raising a child, even if you're not a biological parent, that's what I mean when I say parent. But in general, we're keeping our children's best interests in mind. We know that to be true. We love our kids, we care about them, we want the best for them. And the other truth is that we mess up a lot, and both of those things are okay. And so have some grace with yourself right now. And so I'm going to play this video from the Circle of Security program. This is a program, an intervention, a parenting improvement program for parents of primarily young children. But I think these same ideas, they hold true throughout development. And this is based on decades and decades of research on attachment or bonding between parents and children. All right, so that's it in a nutshell. Again, just these everyday interactions or times that we can support our kids and their needs. But a lot of times we're going to mess up. We just got to try aim for doing it more than we miss. Okay. If this is a topic, a practice, something that's piquing your interest, it seems like it would be helpful to you, and you feel like you might need to realize, how can I just be good enough? Maybe you are overthinking parenting. Maybe it's a source of stress for you. Maybe even feeling like you're not a good enough parent. Here are some books that I suggest. And another cognitive shift is that you need to prioritize you. Parents need to make parent time, self-time, couple time, whatever it is, a priority. We cannot pour from an empty cup, right? That's one analogy. We need to put on our own oxygen mask before we put on our kids. That's another one. Bottom line is, we can't help our kids if we are a mess. Our well-being directly impacts our children's well-being. And there's research that's coming out now that's been following families throughout the coronavirus crisis. And some of this research is showing that caregivers are actually more affected by negative emotions than our kids. So, like, we might be having a harder time than our kids. Even if our kids are having a hard time, it might be worse for us. And that when we feel burdened as parents, like when the parenting job feels really, really hard, that's related to depression and anxiety among parents, and it's also related to more conflict with our kids. So it's so important that we set aside time to take care of ourselves so that we can have an easier time caring for ourselves and caring for our kids. So this might look like having boundaries, like knowing when to say, no, this is my work time and I'll be with you when I can. Boundaries with other people. Prioritizing relationships over other things. Might be just loosening expectations, like especially around screen time. Or maybe getting creative and I really need a half an hour. We're going to get grandma on a video call and grandma can babysit you on the phone for half an hour right now. These sorts of things. And just knowing that's okay. We need that time to get by. Make sure you advocate for yourself with other people in your life. Like, I need this. I really want to vent right now. I'm not looking for advice. Whatever it is that you need, advocate for yourself. A friend of mine, also a fellow parent, recently shared this, and I had to chuckle, but this is a great way to prioritize yourself. Sometimes I go through drive-thru so I can have a hot coffee while my children are restrained. Good for you. That's fantastic. Whatever it is that you need to do that works for you. Another cognitive shift that can help us at this time is to make meaning of what's happening. This can help us to get something out of it, right? It all feels so negative, and it's okay to accept that. And at the same time, also, there might be parts of it that we can make sure that we're getting something out of. So what's the silver lining in all of this? What's one thing that we've learned through this? How have we grown as a family or as people? Maybe you learned a new hobby. Maybe you started talking more as a family. Maybe you became closer. Maybe you realized something that you really don't like. These are all things that are important. Also, do we feel like we matter right now? Do we have meaning in our lives? And if not, what can we do about it? We need to make sure that what we're doing matters. So do our kids. So make sure that they know that they feel important and that they matter to the family, to their community. So how can you contribute as a family to your community? That can be a way that's just big bang for your buck and making us feel good, donating your time and things like this. And how can we come out of this more aware and in tune with ourselves and the world? How can we come out of this kinder, more connected to each other and to the community? That's it for my content today. I want to share that Fernbrook Family Center is offering free consultations that are covered by the Minnesota Care grant. We're open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Citizens of Kasson, please just let us know you were referred here today by the Kasson Mental Health Initiative, and you can get a free 1-hour consultation. You can talk about your parenting challenges, talk about your kids, get new tips. You can just vent. This is a free hour of therapy to do with what you need. And it could be a one-time deal, or you might realize that other resources would be helpful after that time, and we can help you connect with whatever you need. Some helpful websites that I suggest at this time are childmind.org. The CDC has great mental health resources. NAMI, or the National Association for Mental Illness, has fantastic resources for families. MACMA, or the Minnesota Association for Children's Mental Health, also has fantastic resources, as well as the state of Minnesota, the health department. I also love to follow tips on social media. So these are all Instagram, they might be Facebook too. So if you're on social, you might as well make it an educational experience. Of course, as I mentioned, there's a lot of trash on social, but there are a lot of professionals who are disseminating high quality research and practice-based information to help you and your family. So I really like Big Little Feelings, the mom psychologist, Dr. Becky at Home. The Child Mind Institute does daily tips and daily like 20-minute Facebook Lives every day on various topics that are fantastic. Dr. Kelly Vincent and Fatherly, which also is a whole website in and of itself that's great from a father's perspective. So in closing, I would like you to reflect on, and I have just a few questions for you. So again, right now is not the time for a major change in your family. This is not the time to completely overhaul your parenting, right? We're all going through a lot, but and if you are not really struggling as a family right now or as a parent, that's fantastic. Just keep doing more of what you're doing. But some questions. So one, what is one thing either that we talked about today or that you can just reflect on in your own life that you're already doing that you want to do more of in your parenting? So set an intention for that. And then what is one thing that you want to do less of in your parenting? Next, how important is it to you that you do these things? Say on a scale of 1, not important at all, or 0, not important, to 10, it's the most important thing right now. And on the same scale, 0, not at all likely, to 10, I'm absolutely certain. How likely is it that you'll make these things a priority. And if you're not up to 10, maybe think about what's getting in the way, what are some barriers, and I encourage you to talk through this with a trusted other or a professional in your life. So again, final thoughts. Now is not the time to make big changes. You just got to be good enough. Loosen those expectations. And one way to do that is just to prioritize the relationships and the emotions of yourself and your kids over the other stuff right now. So that is it for today. I thank you for joining me. Next week, 2 weeks from now, we're going to have one final YouTube Live, and I'm going to focus more, as I mentioned, on positive parenting, how we can support our youth in their social and emotional and behavioral development using some really practical, everyday strategies. Some of them might be similar to what we heard today, but I'll focus more on those specific strategies with a lot of examples. In the meantime, I hope that everybody stays well, body and mind and spirit. Take care of yourself and your family. And thank you so much for joining me today. Take care.